Coming up on the Sky News Daily with me, Niall Paterson, the world's most famous plane, Air Force One, is in the eye of a political storm. Why?
The first 100 days might be over, but President Trump is showing no signs of slowing down.
America will soon be greater than ever before.
So we're continuing to follow every twist and turn of this remarkable presidency.
And trying to make sense of what it all means for the US and for the rest of the world.
So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Malta Kellner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Sky News Trump 100, wherever you get your podcasts.
They're giving us a free jet. I could say, no, don't give us, I want to pay you $1 billion or 400 million or whatever it is. Or I could say, thank you very much.
The best things in life are free, according to Luther Vandross, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Donald Trump agrees. Certainly, he sees nothing wrong in the Qatari royal family offering a $400 million palace in the sky to replace the US president's ageing Air Force One fleet. Trouble is, plenty of others do, not least because of the Gulf states' links to terrorists Hamas and Hezbollah. But this is a president unburdened by the same legal, ethical and national security concerns that have occupied his predecessors. So, what if he accepts? And could there be an unintended cost? Let's see if we can unravel this with Kenneth T. Walsh, former White House correspondent, now a columnist for US News and World Report, also the author of Air Force One, A History of the Presidents and Their Planes. Ken, look, first of all, just remind us, what exactly has been happening with Trump, the Qataris and Air Force One?
Well, what's happened is a brief subtext here. The two Air Force One planes, the 747s, that we think of Air Force One. Of course, Air Force One is the term used when a president is on the plane, or about 10 years beyond their intended life. So new planes are being constructed by Boeing, and that company has taken very long. They're over budget, and they're nowhere near finishing the planes. So Donald Trump is upset by this. So he's looking for a way to get a new plane or a newer plane. So what has happened is the regime in Qatar has offered him a 747 that their royal family has used as a gift. The problem is our Constitution says that a federal official is not allowed to accept gifts specifically from royalty or foreign countries unless Congress approves. That's the controversy that's going on right now in the States because Air Force One has such a mystique, and people are very interested in this plane for a number of reasons. Should he accept this as a gift, or should he just keep the pressure on the Boeing company to get these new planes moving?
Well, just explain exactly why Air Force One is so important to the American people. I mean, at times it has come to represent America as it has travelled around the world. When did we first see it?
Well, what happened was when Franklin Roosevelt took over as president, he wanted to meet Winston Churchill to plan the D-Day invasion. So they decided they wanted to do it in Casablanca, and they didn't want him traveling by ship because they felt it was too dangerous because of Nazi submarines. So they decided he had to fly. And so that was the first president who flew in office. He made this long flight, took a train down to the Florida Keys, and then he got on a plane, what they called a flying boat, which is a plane that took off and landed in water. It took about 40 hours for him to make this trip, and it was a success. So this sort of cleared the air. So presidents since then have been flying routinely. But it has come to symbolize a projection of American power, the individual policies of individual presidents, and technological prowess of the United States around the world. And that's the basis for the mystique.
Yeah, I mean, in part, obviously, it is a very potent visual representation of the reach of American power. But in addition to that, Ken, I mean, a number of incredibly important moments in, well, American history and indeed in global history have taken place on that plane as well.
They have, exactly. Just an example or two. 9/11, President Bush was in Florida giving a speech. He heard about the attacks on the World Trade Tower, and they realized it was a terrorist attack. So for the rest of that day, he remained on Air Force One, conducting the business of state and the genesis of the whole global war on terror that President Bush came up with in response to those terrorist attacks. And that was all figured out initially on Air Force One. So it was a very, very important moment, a crisis atmosphere that the country always will remember.
We've also seen presidents made on Air Force One as well.
Yes, exactly. When President Kennedy was assassinated in November of 1963, Lyndon Johnson, who was his vice president, was sworn in as the new president aboard Air Force One. That's probably the moment that people remembered the most.
Solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That morning, of course, John F. Kennedy had arrived triumphantly in Dallas, and then he was shot and killed. And so his corpse was taken back to Washington on Air Force One. And Lyndon Johnson wanted to show that the Constitution endured and he would continue Kennedy's policies and that the country was in good hands immediately. So he wanted to be sworn in on the presidential plane. He realized the importance that image would have for the country, and that's exactly what he did. Air Force One is at the absolute center of that legacy and that transition that Lyndon Johnson was trying to convey to the world.
Ken, look, you've mentioned now the significance of the plane during 9/11, the transition of power after JFK was killed. But we also get the more minor inflection points in history cropping up on Air Force One. We had the first announcement of the renamed Gulf of Mexico, now, thanks to Trump, called the Gulf of America. That happened, I think, a couple of months ago.
Air Force One is currently in international waters, for the first time in history, flying over the recently renamed Gulf of America. Please enjoy the flight, and we are now about to head westbound to Super Bowl 59.
Wow, he just did well.
And even yesterday, the president was giving an update on ongoing efforts to stop the war in Ukraine.
Look, nothing's going to happen until Putin and I get together, okay? And obviously he wasn't going to go. He was going to go, but he thought I was going to go. He wasn't going if I wasn't there. And I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together. But we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying. Thank you. You're going to land right now. Thank you.
Now, Ken, yours is clearly a glittering career. I've been told you've been on Air Force One, over 250 times in 35 years as a journalist. So, for a second, can you be tour guide and explain to us exactly what it is like inside the White House in the sky?
First of all, when I, as a journalist, travel on Air Force One, and this just goes for any journalist who travels, we're in a separate compartment at the back of the plane.
The cheap seats.
We can't get in and out of that compartment unless the Secret Service lets us or a staff person lets us. We're not privy to much of what goes on the plane unless we report it somehow later. Now, many times the president will come back and talk to us and see us, and that's happened many, many times. I've talked to many of the presidents. I've covered 7 presidents. They will come back and talk to us on the plane. We get briefings from the staff and so on. So we do get a sense of what's going on the plane. But for the president, they think of it as the flying White House, a flying Oval Office. And it really is. If you start in the front of the plane, that's the president's compartment. It's like a first-class hotel suite in the sky. There's a presidential office, which is very, very spacious. There's a medical center where they can do surgery. That's a gruesome reminder of the Kennedy assassination, that there's always a physician on board, often a surgeon. Then you get the senior staff compartments, VIP compartments, Secret Service, conference room, more VIP compartments, more Secret Service, and then you get to the media in the very back of the plane. And there's a couple of galleys or kitchens on the plane, too. But for the president to fly, it's much different than anybody else because everything focuses on the president. The president never has to wait to take off and land. That would be a tremendous advantage for any flyer or anybody who understands how air travel works today. They clear a 2-mile swath in the sky for Air Force One on each side. So there's no planes that are allowed to fly near it. And also there are a lot of countermeasures on the plane in case it's attacked by missiles and so on that are designed to deflect those missiles. Every president that I'm aware of loves that plane because they can control everything and everything centers around them. At the White House, there's a lot of tedium. There's a lot of routine. There's a lot of ceremony. On Air Force One, the president can create whatever mood or environment that he or someday she wants to create. Lots of times they can find time to ruminate on the plane, time to meet with staff, time to unburden themselves and talk to people that they trust, friends and family. So Air Force One is very important in the lifestyle of presidents.
Let's take this back to what's going on at the moment. Why has there been this delay in the replacement for Air Force One? I would have thought that, any airplane manufacturer like Boeing would have prioritised this as a matter of course. I mean, where's it all gone wrong?
This is a big surprise to a lot of people. Now, of course, Boeing Company has gone through some very difficult times recently. They've had their newest planes, the commercial planes, have problems, and there have been crashes.
We are following breaking news out of Ethiopia, where a plane went down just outside the capital, killing everyone on board.
A Boeing 737 plane that left from Jakarta, Indonesia, is missing. A spokesperson for Lion Air says they lost contact with the plane and they're actively searching for it.
Boeing CEO says the company is, quote, acknowledging its mistake after the Alaska Airlines mid-air door blowout last week.
They have had serious problems in the fundamentals of the business, having these planes stay in the air. In the case of Air Force One, Donald Trump, in order to save money when he was negotiating for the new planes in his first term, they discovered that there were frames of 747s, the jumbo jets that he wanted to use, in the desert. I believe it was in Arizona. A Russian company had bought them, and they went bankrupt, and they couldn't pay for them, so they were taken back. So Donald Trump said, let's use those frames and just build new planes on them. It'll save us a lot of money. That's what they did. Now, this caused some conniptions at the Pentagon because they said, well, we don't know how safe these frames are. That's going to have to all be inspected for not only for safety, but for possible sabotage, for spying, for surveillance. And so it's going to take us a long time to get those frames to where we need them technologically. And so that's one reason it's taken a long time. And then the other thing I'd mention is that the plane has to have a nuclear protective coating on it, basically. That takes a long time to put in. So this plane is very complicated to construct. The military is very strict on the standards that they want, and that's why it's taken so long.
But Ken, if the use of those airframes as proposed by Donald Trump was, as you say, giving the blokes down the Pentagon conniptions, then surely the president using a plane gifted by the ruling royal family of a Gulf state would surely also be giving them canaries.
Well, this is being debated right now, and some of President Trump's own Republican supporters in Congress are raising exactly these kind of questions. And so it's a shaky proposition whether this is going to go through. Maybe, if Congress voted on it, would they even approve it? I don't know, because the Democrats certainly would vote against it. And there's enough opposition rising in the Republican Party that Donald Trump might not get the vote he wants or he would want to have this whole gift go through. Now, I suspect what he's thinking, as he does in so many other cases, is that he can outlast everybody and he's going to get his way and get the gift of the plane under the terms he wants. That's all going to have to be decided in the courts, and I think that's where it's going to be decided.
Ken, let me put you on the spot then. On balance, do you think this is going to happen? Do you think Trump will ultimately get that jet from the Qataris?
I do. There's a lot of sort of escape hatches for Donald Trump, a lot of arguments he could use to get his way. And he's very good at finding these arguments and getting his way. So I think he'll do everything he can to make this happen, unless he just feels like he's causing too many hard feelings in Congress among his own supporters. But so far, I don't think we're there. I think it looks to me like he will just proceed and take it to court and let it transpire there.
Ken, let's wrap this up on a uniformly positive note. Of all those many, many journeys that you took on Air Force One, is there one favourite memory you have of your time on a presidential jet?
Well, I have many of them, but one that always leaps to mind immediately is a trip with President Clinton. We went to Australia, and it was, as you know, and as anybody who's made that trip knows, it's a very, very long flight. I was in the press cabin. I was there by myself. I was the only person awake. And all my colleagues were asleep. I stood there looking at the television screen. We have TV in there, thinking, how am I going to pass the next 10 hours on this plane? Because nothing was happening. Everybody was asleep. Then I hear from the galley, which is at the back of the press cabin, the famous Clinton voice, Ken, how you doing? And he had made his way through the whole plane looking for someone to talk to. He was a noted night owl. He was the only one awake. The Secret Service, he had eluded his minders. He showed up by himself in the press cabin. So my question then was, as a reporter, all my colleagues are asleep. If I wake them up, they're going to turn the TV cameras on. The president's going to leave after 30 seconds. Why don't I just talk to him myself? Because I knew him, and I thought maybe I could get him to be sort of expansive, and he can review the trip, which is what I did. And I talked to him, and nobody else woke up. I talked to him for about a half hour. We just sat by the galley, and he told stories about the leaders he had met, the policies he had discussed and implemented. He talked about diving at the Great Barrier Reef and swimming over a giant clam and all this sort of thing. But this is what you want as a reporter. I mean, I felt that this is a spontaneous moment that I could sort of get behind the curtain and see what this man is really like. And I think I did.
I have to admit, that's some nice work, Ken. Some very nice work there. It's been a pleasure chatting to you, Ken Walsh. You take care. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And that is your lot for the Daily 4 this week. We are back again Monday. Have a great weekend.
The first 100 days might be over, but President Trump is showing no signs of slowing down.
America will soon be greater than ever before.
So we're continuing to follow every twist and turn of this remarkable presidency.
And trying to make sense of what it all means for the US and for the rest of the world.
So join me, James Matthews.
Me, Malta Kellner.
And me, Mark Stone.
For Sky News Trump 100, wherever you get your podcasts.